What was that first moment like, singing together?
I feel like the both of us were like, huh? What? What?
Stephen Schwartz, who wrote the music and lyrics to Wicked. We have Jonathan Bailey, who plays Prince Piero. We have the one, the only, Ariana Grande, who plays Glinda. We have the absolutely incredible Cynthia Erivo, who plays Elphaba. And last and certainly not least, we have the director, JonM.ChuWicked. Give it up! The enthusiasm is absolutely electric. It's electric in here because this movie is so incredible. But before we talk about the movie, I think we have to go all the way back. There's no movie without the Broadway musical. So that means there's no movie without Stephen Schwartz and Mark Platt's collaboration. Stephen Schwartz music and lyrics. I would love to know if you can sort of take us all the way back. The 90s, I think, when this began. When did you both realize that you had something really special on your hands?
I read this book by this brilliant novel by Gregory Maguire with this great idea at the center of it. Somewhere in the late 90s and thought this would be a great movie. So I started developing it as a film, because I'm a film producer as well, as a Broadway producer, and I thought this is so cinematic, wants to be on film. And I wasn't happy with the screenplay. And one day, this genius of a man called me and said, I know you have the rights to Wicked and you're developing it as a film. I think it should be a stage musical first. And thank goodness I listened to him. Over to Steve.
Mark is going to tell the story. You know, I heard about the book from a friend of mine in a very random way. She just said, she told me the title and the idea. And immediately, you know, all the hairs on my arm stood up and I thought, what a genius idea. And it just feels like it should be a musical, and it's so much in my territory in terms of the themes. So then I found out, of course, that rights were sold to a movie company, and I thought, oh, well, this is a hopeless adventure because this is never going to happen, but I'm going to try and go and talk the movie company into not making a movie and starting with a stage musical. But I was very lucky because this was the gentleman running the movie company at the time. So I walked into Mark's office with great trepidation and enormous pessimism, and before I said anything, he sang. Did you sing Corner of the Sky?
Corner of the Sky.
Wow! Give us 50 bars.
So I knew that maybe I had a receptive audience there.
I'd love to see your Corner of the Sky one day, Mark. I will say.
Mark really sings, by the way.
I saved that for my children.
I have to know, we've heard that Ariana and Cynthia, they didn't audition together, right? You never saw them test together, that never happened. How did you know, without any sort of chemistry read, that they not only were obviously perfect for the parts, but would be perfect together?
Because they took these roles from my hands. They literally entered the room, and we've been searching for a while, and bit by bit just took the whole thing, and you were like, there was no other choice for a Glinda when you see Ariana Grande do this. There's no choice when she's so funny, and you're like, she's the most interesting person in the room, and she owns it so much, you're like, wow, this is gonna feel like a discovery, because I've never seen this side to her. We have no choice when Cynthia Erivo comes in jeans and a t-shirt after she sold out the Walt Disney Concert Hall, and she just sings Wizard and I. And when she sings those first words, did that really just happen? It feels like she's a little girl in a dorm room like me and at USC dreaming about making movies, and it connected so deeply. There was literally no other choice. These were the people. And so the chemistry, we're like, we'll figure it out. And the first time they met, they came to my house. This was, I don't know, 8 months later. They came to my house to meet for the first time. It's where I met a lot of people in person for the first time. This is during lockdown. And Stephen Schwartz gets on the piano and starts playing For Good. And these ladies just walk right up there, and I grab my kids, like, you're sitting right here and watching this. And as soon as their voices hit, and nothing was rehearsed, I knew we had a movie.
What was that first moment like, singing together in front of Stephen and John and everyone?
I feel like the both of us were like, huh? What? What? Because it's like it connected. It's a very intimate thing when you find a person that you can sing with, because it means that the both of you are willing to hear each other, and not just like listening to your own part, but you're actually intently listening to the person who's singing with you. That's more important than the sound of your own voice. When you can find a person who is willing to do that with you, you know that they're willing to like really go on a journey with you. And when that happened, I was so excited.
Me too.
Yeah.
I was so grateful.
You ruined it for everybody else.
Me,
did
you
the thing.
too. We're really screwed.
Never singing with
I'm
anyone else.
spoiled for life.
What's gonna happen now?
I don't know. But it was beautiful. It was really special. We kind of noticed the first time we sang together that when we sing at the same time, it's hard to tell who's singing what. And our vibratos kind of latched onto one another, and they sort of hold hands and loop the same way, the same speed, and you can't really explain why something like that happens, but just a really insane connection, and we were freaked out by it. We were like, what the?
We all cried. The rest of us just cried.
That literally sounds like magic to me. And literally, it's magic. It's so incredible. And the person who has the most chemistry with the most amount of people in the movie is absolutely Jonathan Bambi. I think you had a moment with every single student at Shiz at one point. So tell me, where do you get that from? How do you do it? Like, is it a Bridgerton thing? Like, how do you do that?
Definitely wasn't directed, let me tell you.
Okay.
It just started to happen.
I think we did get a note from John saying too flirty. Me and you.
Yes.
Or was it
Our
teen
kiss, it was
movies
our
in
kiss.
that?
It's our Christmas too. Anyway, yeah, Chris Scott. I mean, it's interesting hearing this amazing story. I feel like this film is the sum of so many friendships and creative partnerships, and John has brought along a whole mini team of pals that you've worked with for so many years, and it just set an incredible tone. One of which is Chris Scott, the choreographer, and he's incredible. And I was quite late to join everyone, but I started rehearsing. I was travelling in, and I'd have a day, and then me and Chris would just work intensely. And one of the things I said is that I do just think Fierro is confident and kind enough to invite everyone to Winky Country, and so everyone should be included, especially he's got such a huge arc. Actually, he represents the change that these women create, I think, around them. So to make sure that he starts off with a relish was important, and the librarian, Sharida, I know it's never going to be as good as that for me.
Oh, that's so fantastic. I love that there was sort of an intimate group here. I really want to sort of home in on some specific numbers. I think Dancing Through Life is a great place to start just because it's such a big, joyous dancing number. I mean, the camera work is insane. It's amazing. And then when we get to the Ozfest Ballroom, we see Elphaba absolutely shatters our hearts and our souls. So I would love to sort of talk for a second, I guess maybe starting with John, like how you conceived of that and decided to expand that from the stage version, because we do spend more time in that song than we do on the stage.
Yeah, we talked all about what we needed to do in Dancing Through Life, which is all with Johnny Fierro coming in and breaking the rules for these people. So the choreography was very specific and angled and stuff before, but then as soon as he comes, he sort of loosens their joints up. And as soon as we saw Johnny dance, then we're like, okay, this is like new John Travolta coming in here, and he was fearless, jumping on the book, sliding on the book. He's so physical, and so we designed this whole. I mean, he can do that all in one, from the thing to jumping on the books, to flipping the books, to going upside. I mean, that's all him. But the tornado wheel, people wanted to call it the hamster wheel for so long, and I was like, let's call it the tornado wheel, please.
Tornado wheel. Okay.
So the tornado wheel, we knew we needed something. We're doing hints of different like Americana movies throughout this movie. Like when they come into Shiz, it's sort of like an '80s John Hughes movie. We wanted to sort of deconstruct this idea, and sort of 2001, this sort of spinning thing, or Royal Wedding, however you want to see it. The amount of work that engineering needed to do to build those three, the amount of insurance conversations I had to have, because any of those ladders could behead you. We couldn't build that until 2 weeks before we were shooting it, and then we didn't know what type of dancers to put in. Do you need stunt people? Do you need parkour people? Do you need hoppers? Do you need breakers? Like, it was like a mad rush once we got that thing to work.
Wow, what did you need? I'm so curious.
We got parkour. We got all of it.
All of it.
Parkour mainly because they could really walk on those. They had to be able to walk on those ladders. But we knew we needed to go big on that front side so that the Ozfest could get as small as possible. We knew that the dynamics of Dancing Through Life had to be that, because the bigger we went, then the smaller we could go with them and go to silence and basically hand off the canvas to these two women. And that work was the two of them with Chris to just figure out how Elphaba moves. How does she make space? Is she defiant? Or is she, she's been told to prove herself, been told to control her powers, or does she surrender to her power? And I loved finding that with them because they really had it on the first time. And every time we shot it, you had to go from A to Z. We could not just cut into a piece. They had to go through all the emotions, and that was beautiful to watch. And that's all them.
Wow, what was it like for you, Cynthia, filming that moment?
Yeah, when we first sort of like figured out what we wanted to do, I walked in and Chris Scott and Comfort and Will, the associate choreographers, had already choreographed something, and I watched it and thought it was wonderful, but said no thank you, because it didn't feel like Elphaba. It didn't feel like her language. It didn't feel like that's the way she would move, at least truthfully for me. So when we set to work finding out what movement felt right for her, I knew that I wanted her to be someone who could move, but she just understood movement differently. So once we've discovered that, this dance came out of something, we choreographed it to almost silence and just found out what like the rhythm would be and what the story was. And I kept trying to figure out, well, why when she takes the hat off, would she then put the hat back on? I need to give her a reason to go back and pick it up. We sort of decided that it was in order to regain ownership of what that hat actually meant and what it could do, so that it really does become the emblem of the Wicked Witch when she puts it back on her head, and it's, instead of it being an object of pain. Then when that dance finishes, I was like, well, what do I do in order to invite Glinda to come and join? What is that moment? We realized that it was just sort of like a moment of quiet, and it's just like a shoulder movement which allows for sort of invitation, can we start again? Wonderfully, Ari chose not to like learn it completely so that I could teach it to her. So every time we would do this dance, she wouldn't learn it completely, so that when we got to the day when we were shooting, she was learning it every time from me. And so we could really work in partnership. So that wonderful, I love when we get to put our hands together, because I get to guide her hands in the right way, and we get to move together, and we are moving at that pace so that it is like, oh, we're learning each other for the first time properly.
Wow.
A day was really tough, really painful, but rightfully so, and really necessary. I felt like the most protected, most safe, most held person in that room. Every single person put so much energy forward into the middle of the dance floor and really held me up, including John and Mark. And Ari was fierce in the protection, fierce in keeping the energy right so that I get through it every time. Those tears fell every single time. It hurt every single time. But even still, I was always holding just a little bit, and they could all see it, so that by the end of the day, whatever was left just sort of fell out.
Wow.
And she sent me home at the end of it, yeah.
A really fearless thing to do with,
Yeah.
in a room full of people and the cameras were on you, and Ariana had that experience. How was that for you?
Well, I just felt that it was important that it felt scary for me, just because I think in that moment, up until that very moment, Glinda's biggest fear is probably standing in a circle of a bunch of people being judged, or having them think something negative about you, the way that it's happening for Elphaba, being made fun of, not being liked, not being popular. I think that's probably her biggest fear until that very moment. And then it switches very quickly, and her biggest fear becomes hurting someone like that ever again. And it's not that she joins out of pity or out of, oh, I feel badly for this person. It's an urgent need to take it on with her. And it's like, how can I jump into this space and become one with this person that I've caused so much pain? Try to transmute it somehow. The not learning of the dance made for it to just look as beautifully awkward and honest as possible.
And the restraint not to cry.
Yeah.
Because we were all feeling uncomfortable, and it would be so easy for you to fall into that same energy, and we were like, hold back. You're like, I can hold back. This is my choice to. She's not gonna cry, but being on that cusp of that edge was just so beautiful to watch. And same thing with you guys are like walking this fine ledge of this, and it forced all our cameras to be more restrained. It forced everything to just sit back and let it play.
It's been a greatest pleasure of mine just to observe, obviously in those moments, but also as the role of Fiero, but also it's the two coming together, but John working with the two of you, and I think it was an amazing day to see the safety and the detail, the sort of, there was just like a glow and something that I wouldn't be able to describe it or put it to words, but between these three. And I remember just being there and observing it, and then Michelle Yeoh came back with her Oscar.
Yeah, you had a party for her at the Oz Dust Ballroom after she came back. That had to be the best Oscar party in the world.
And then her first scene up was with Johnny and me right after she returned. And we had this big Oscar party with a cake that was an Oscar, and then there was an actual Oscar. And then Johnny and they were like, all right, Johnny and Ari, you're up with Michelle. And we were like, okay. Her first scene back after winning, we were like, all right, let's go. Here we go. All right. It was crazy.
How did you figure out how to sort of cinematically transform and take popular, already a perfect musical theater song, and make it even more perfect for the screen with that brand new ending?
I just wanted to build the ending more. I played it for Ari, and Ari at first was hesitant to do that because she thought it would look as if we were just throwing something in for Ariana Grande and not for the character. But I just said, if I thought of this in 2003, this is how the song would have ended. I just didn't think of it until now.
Wow.
And so once Ari was confident that it was actually an authentic choice, then she did it, and brilliantly.
And Ari had to be down for that. I mean, it was amazing. But then Ari, we were like, hey, if we're gonna do this ending, we gotta like up the ante. Like, we're not gonna cut. We're gonna do one take, and you're gonna do the whole thing. Every mistake, people are gonna pick apart. If you don't kick your leg up there, you gotta train for this.
I knocked my teeth out.
Can you do this? Are you willing to go there? And most actors would be like, no. Can you have one cut in the middle somewhere? And she went for it, and that was so fun to see.
I guess going from One Short Day, that brings us, into the last sort of, act of the film, where we get this like amazing action sequence where we get to Defying Gravity, where you absolutely, something you tear the roof off the plane. The roof is already gone. It's one thing to sing that song. I think it's another thing to sort of do it while being hoisted through the air, thrown about. How do you prepare for a challenge like that and pull it off?
I put myself through some rigorous training because I knew I was going to be doing the stunts and singing live at the same time. So I wanted to make sure that my body was prepared for it. And I had an amazing vocal coach who just helped me find the breath I needed in order to do it. Because usually if you're singing something like that, and that needs a lot of force, that needs a lot of sound, usually you need the ground to push off of.
Yeah.
When you don't have it, you have to find it somewhere else. And so it was about sort of replacing the ground with literally the air and my non-existent diaphragm because it was in a corset. So it was just like a real learning curve for me. I was really determined. I really wanted to do the song justice, and I really wanted to do the stunts because I wanted to feel like I was flying whilst I was singing this song. So I just did everything in my power that I could, and endured whatever bruises and chafing and whatever it was necessary to. And listen, the word chafing sounds funny, but the reality is it's painful. It's necessary. I wanted to make sure that I could experience both what flight felt like and what it felt like to sing that song in one. And I hope it was worth it.
Yeah, I think it was worth it. I'm gonna go on record and say I think it was definitely worth it.
For Defying Gravity, it was every piece of stunts and VFX that build as much as you can because it really helps that. So we say a lot about the physical stuff, but the VFX needed those things, and they're all over this movie. And I think all of those things together, and each of us thought of if we're blowing up this idea of the Wizard of Oz, of this American fairy tale, with this new idea of what a hero looks like, of what a villain looks like, of what you're supposed to do. Each character needs to ask their first question, their first real question in Oz. And I love mapping that out when Johnny's in that forest. And he asks, and his brain breaks, which is then you wouldn't be so unhappy. And watch each of them break open. So to me, it was all the big spectacles, but everybody understood the beats that they were doing. They would come to our rehearsals, all the department heads, and we'd walk through everything, and Mark and Steven, we'd all be talking through this constantly, which is maybe why we talk a lot about it, but we've talked about this. And then each would take their craft and their language and infuse the movie with that. And I was just like, let's get it on film, get those things in jars, and let's try to see.
I want to thank all of you for sitting and talking to me and for your work on this incredible film. So give it up for Stephen Ford, Mark Platt, Jonathan Bailey, Ariana Grande, Cynthia Erivo, and JonM.Chu. Thank you so much for